We are excited about today because one of the things that we are all being touched with is all types of cyber crime and cyber security and all these other things. When you look, how many in this room actually, how many in the room have ever got like a spam call on their mobile phone? That's like everybody, right? It's like, you know, even the DA's office gets that kind of stuff. So, hello, all right. So I'm already being cyber crimed right now, trying to turn my mic off. So I just want to make it clear that what we're going to be talking about today throughout the day, what am I throughout the day? I mean, for the next hour and a half or so, we're going to talk about how this impacts all of us. We're going to particularly talk about businesses. Whether you have a salon, or you have a restaurant, or you have a borough president office, all of it can be attacked. And we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're also going to even talk a little bit about on the individual level. For someone who's done some hacking in my own career, it's so easy to get to people's computers. And you'd be surprised when you're not protecting your computer how vulnerable you become. I wasn't an evil, you know, guy, but but it definitely is an important topic, and we've got the best minds in this room right now to talk about it. In addition, we're streaming this particular tech meetup, and I want to take my hat off to Jolie in the back there, who works with the ISOC, who's putting it up on their site as well as we stream it through Silicon Harlem. So it's a wonderful thing for those of you who have people who wanted to be here who couldn't be here. You can certainly let them know it's being streamed if you can get a signal down here in the basement. We're so honored whenever, it was a surprise to me that she had the time to come here today. So I am forever grateful whenever I can have Gale Brewer in the same room with me. So if you don't mind, put your hands together for our honorable President, Gale Brewer.
Thank you, Clayton Banks. I could go on and on about you too, and Bruce. I'm going to right now. So I really am honored to be here, and I have to say, I always tell people that my favorite activity in life is going to a civic hackathon. Some people like plays. I like plays and movies. But the fact that technology is making people's lives better, and that's what Silicon Harlem does, is really, really important. So it is an honor to be here. And I just want to talk, I'm not the best informed on cyber, but I am informed on civic. And so I'm just going to talk to you for a few minutes about some of the things that I know that are going on, and I think they play a role in the overall issue of being safe. First of all, I want to thank Silicon Harlem because you may not know this, but just for instance, recently I went to Family Day. I go to every friggin' Family Day. There's no Family Day that I miss. And the one that you may not know that at every night of development there is a Family Day, and they're very special and they're very hospitable, and a lot of work goes into them. But at St. Nicholas Development, where Mr. Ball is the president of the TA, there's a huge thanks to Athena Moore for our office knowing there's a large computer facility, and it is in the past been underutilized, and of course it always needs upgrading. But this amazing group, Silicon Harlem, has been working with the young people at St. Nick, figuring out how that computer lab can be best utilized to teach coding or other kinds of support. That's what we're all about. Finding the resources and figuring out how people can help each other. That's number one. Number two, of course, is thanks to the Greater Harlem Chamber, the seniors have a day. And in the past, they didn't have the opportunity to learn about technology. But again, Silicon Harlem has made that one of their priorities because the seniors want as much as anybody to be able to understand what this revolution is all about. And it's very, very important, and really quickly, early on with their collaboration, Silicon Harlem picked that up, and I really appreciate that. They've also been something of a major influence on Columbia, Rutgers, CCNY, NYU, other colleges, but particularly Rutgers and Columbia and CCNY, putting together a federal grant So competitive. I thought LA was going to get it. Salt Lake City and New York got it. And this grant, you can hear more from Silicon Harlem, was partly received. It is to figure out, it's basically a lab at Columbia and at Rutgers to figure out, does 5G work? Is there a situation in which urban America can participate in fast, inexpensive, quality connections, taking care of all the cyber issues that you'll hear about today, but generally it's an experiment, it's a pilot. And we're working with the schools. So far, my understanding, having just met with Sharon the other day, is that the nodes are going up. They haven't actually done any experiments yet, but it's because of Silicon Harlem. This is a huge grant with many, many people as stakeholders in Harlem. And it's much thanks to Silicon Harlem that it came here. Another example of, look at the span that Silicon Harlem is playing in this community. They're also going to be doing a TEDx, which of course will bring together other minds thinking about civic tech and ways that the technology can help people. And I want to thank them for giving me this amazing opportunity to go to Harlem, H-A-A-R-L-E-M. Harlem here, Silicon Harlem says, Gale, you want to come to a civic hackathon competition with people from the Netherlands? I said, sure. And I show up, competition takes place, a couple of years, and then I was going to the Netherlands to speak about technology, and guess, I was right next to H-A-A-R-L-E-M. So the mayor of Harlem invited me to spend a week there, and then of course he comes every year to Silicon Harlem. And we actually had lunch for all of them, or dinner, I think, at Sylvia's recently. This is a special organization. So you're going to hear today about all the amazing ways that we can fight this challenge in terms of security, cybersecurity, but this is an organization that in a very short span has made a difference big time, and a wide range, and I've only talked about some of them, all the job work that Bruce and Clayton are doing and their colleagues with young people. That's another whole aspect of this program. So I'm just here to say thank you for being so innovative. Very quickly, this issue, there's so many complicated issues that are going on in terms of how do we figure out civic tech and technology in general. I want to thank the mayor's office. You'll hear from them later. But in our office, in the borough president's office, we're mostly focusing on the open data. And the issue that, again, plays a role, I'm sure you'll hear, because data has to be secure. But in our cases, we've managed to take the bill that I passed in the city council and try to make it available to people in the community. Because yes, academics, real estate, techies can figure out how to use it, but how do you get it used locally? So we've got every 4 years now, we've had a 4-year program with Beta NYC, and we are working with CUNY students, sometimes 12 per year, wonderful students who understand that this is a career they want to go into, and they are taking this data, which is not easy to unravel so that it can be understood by the civics, the Black associations, and the community boards. And for instance, recently we are huge database on the churches, synagogues, and temples, every imam, priest, rabbi, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but they just love to sell their building to the highest developer and make money, and then put the church, synagogue, temple on the first floor. That makes me crazy, because I want to keep the building, figure out a way to make sure the parishioners and the mission is ongoing, but not have a condo where there was a beautiful building. Not so easy to do. If it's landmark, that's one thing, but many of these faith-based are not landmarks. So we're working to put together all of this data for the borough of Manhattan, but particularly in Harlem. That's an example of what you can do with this data. And then you have to take it and do something with it. But then you know, in this particular area, which is a mid to high zoning, it's very vulnerable for these institutions, because you look at the data and you can see where they are. So that's an example. Another one is all the boundaries. We have police, sanitation, community board, school board, youth board, I could go on, bid board, all of these different boundaries. I can give you every single one in my head in the borough of Manhattan, but I'm not normal. So you need to have somebody who's not 311 be able to tell you these boundaries and if they change and so on. That's another example how you can use that data so people in the community know what is where, because people are very confused. The list goes on. Open data analytics is what we're teaching the students who then go out and teach in the community. I finally just want to mention something. Last night I went to Life Sciences. It is a program sponsor to the credit of the Economic Development Corporation of the City of New York. They take 30 students, this is the second year, from 5 boroughs, very diverse, stipends for the summer, placed in a company. And those young people have now developed, whether they are a PhD at CCNY in biology, or somebody who is at Columbia, NYU, or Brooklyn Tech, anywhere, that then learns the background for getting into life sciences. And I think those of you who are here today know this is a really upcoming field. We've got all of the universities, we've got all the talent here. We need to be number one in life sciences, and that means curing diabetes, curing cancer, curing what I care about. We need to eat healthier, and the list goes on. So this is an example of the city, I think, taking what we have in terms of workforce and giving them the opportunity to be part of this revolution. So these are good things that are all happening. Census is coming up. I know it's a boring topic, but boy, is technology going to play a role. And boy, do we have to deal with the question, which is not going to be on the survey, but everybody thinks it is. And boy, do we have to figure out how we use technology, not just to fill out the form, but how to communicate that this is okay to do. And again, that's up to you. It's all of us to figure it out, because if we don't fill out those forms, we're going to lose at least 1 and maybe 2 congressional seats. And you know what that means, a huge loss in dollars for the state of New York for food stamps and WIC and Title I, and the list goes on. So I want to bring that up as a topic that April 1st, 2020 is the deadline. We cannot forget that as something that is a goal to use technology now and then to figure out how we make sure everybody is counted. And the final thing was just schools. I mentioned a little bit in terms of the Columbia and Rutgers possibilities, but there are 2 things that happened that are good this year. One is finally, the State Department of Education, it took us 5 years, has agreed that if you're a teacher, you don't have to teach out of license. You can teach in computer science. Until this year, September of 2019, you had to teach in biology or physics or English or something else in order to teach computer science. And finally now you can be a computer science teacher. That makes a big difference. And the other thing that's happened is there was something called Directive 10, which is in the controller's office and OMB, and it basically said you can't buy any students anything but the cart with some computers in it. You can't get them a laptop, you can't get them an iPad, you can't get them a Chrome. That changed. So as of September 2019, city money can buy the same darn item that the charter school kids have, that the private school kids have, which is something that is much more usable and has better information, particularly for the kids who are disabled, who need the Chromes. So these are some of the good things that are happening, but it is slow. It is very slow. And it's frustrating for me as somebody who wants to be sure that the people of the city of New York use technology in a way that makes their lives better. So I just want to say thank you. We're all working on small businesses. I know this is more of a tech small business. We did pass in the city council just last week the vacancy data bill. And this is of interest to you. Every single store in 90 days is going to have to tell every single owner of every single commercial, first and second floor, is going to have to tell us if they have a vacancy. I can't tell you the drama in getting this friggin' bill passed. But the mayor will either sign it or not, but it'll become law at the end of August. And he will sign it or he won't sign it, but if he doesn't sign it, it becomes law. Don't get into me with his non-signing. I won't get into all that. But it will be law because he has agreed that he likes it. And within 90 days, every owner will give us the data of every vacancy in the city of New York. That'll help us with the challenge I have of so many vacant storefronts and what are you going to do with them? And then we'll know this is a real issue, because I'm tired of stating it's an issue and nobody believes me. So it's another example of how data can be used by all of you to figure out what you want to do with it and what we need to do it for the people of the city of New York. Thank you very much. Thank you, Athena Moore, who's also here from my office. And thank you, Clayton and Bruce, for being who you are. Thank you very much.
So let's start with Office of the Manhattan District Attorney. And we got 3 of them here. They're all going to play some sort of role somehow. But the first one we're going to bring up is Elizabeth Roper. And let's give her a hand as she comes up. Come on up, and you'll be introducing our presentation.
Thank you so much. I just want to start off by saying thank you to Clayton Banks, to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. We're so excited to be a part of this event, and I'm personally so excited to have an opportunity to speak briefly to this particular audience. And thank you to Borough President Brewer for your excellent remarks and your outstanding leadership in the borough. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Cybercrime and Identity Theft Bureau at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And when you think cybercrime, it sounds lofty, it sounds sophisticated. You think the Target hack, you think Russian cyber criminals. And the reality is our bureau and my office, we do investigate and prosecute a number of sophisticated and very high profile cases. But the bulk of what we do is investigate and prosecute complaints by individual citizens who have been victimized or affected by cybercrime and identity theft. And a particular case that I think illustrates that and illustrates some of the points that we've heard already today about the importance of educating our communities and particularly educating our younger people is a case that our office announced just yesterday, or a pair of cases in which 35 people were arrested for their role in a scheme in which checks were being stolen, forged, and negotiated to steal millions, literally millions of dollars. And they were being stolen in a few different ways. One is just out of the mail, straight up people fishing checks out of the mail, not sophisticated at all, but very effective. Another way is by hacking into different types of software that check cashing businesses use to store their data, so a lot more sophisticated, but still something that we found that young people were doing and able to do. And then a third way was by the fraudsters recruiting people who work at those businesses. So also, not a cyber infiltration, but an important type of compromise that I think businesses really need to be aware of, and that can expose them to a lot of losses. And the other interesting aspect of that case is that once those checks were stolen and had been used to make forgeries, they were being deposited into accounts belonging to mostly to young people, to high school and college age kids who were recruited primarily on social media. They see Instagram photos or Facebook photos of these people flashing huge amounts of cash, partying at cool bars and restaurants, driving fancy cars, and these people will say to them, look, just let me use your debit card, you'll make money, you'll be a part of this cool lifestyle. And these are kids who are our students, our family members, our children who are really easily victimized by this and can frankly end up themselves getting in a lot of trouble. And so it's an important type of crime that I think everyone needs to be aware of, and that it's a case that we're particularly proud of in our office. And that's really kind of the only point that I want to make. I won't take up too much of your time because I know everyone wants to get to the presentation and the panels. But I just want to emphasize for everyone in this audience that our office, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and my bureau in particular, we're here to be a resource for you, for the community. So if you have a concern, if you're a small business owner, if you're a large business owner, if you have an incident where you think you've been the victim of a cybercrime, you are concerned about identity theft, fraud, please reach out to us. We have a hotline. The number is available on our website at manhattanda.org. And there's really nothing that's too simple or too complicated or too big or too small for us to take a look at. We want to help the community. We want to be a resource. And so even if you just have a question, if there's something you're concerned about, approach me. You know, I'm here this afternoon, but if not that, please pick up the phone and give us a call. The other thing I'll say is that we at the DA's office all know that the best thing we can do for all of you and for the community is not to prosecute crime, right, but it's to help you prevent it from happening in the first place. And that's particularly true when it comes to cybercrime, because these crimes are so devastating and so hard to investigate and prosecute. And so I think we're very lucky to have from my office both Jeremy Glickman and Ken Kern, who are going to talk in turn about some different ways that you can help protect yourselves against these types of crimes. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Jeremy Glickman. He's also a member of the Cybercrime and Identity Theft Bureau, as well as counsel to the Investigation Division in my office. And frankly, there's probably nobody in Manhattan or New York City who has more experience investigating and prosecuting identity theft crimes. So we're very lucky to have him. And he's going to talk to you specifically about protecting businesses and individuals from what we call the insider threat. So that's kind of the check cashing employee I was talking about, the person who you invite into your home or employ in your business who, you know, might be in a position to take advantage of that access and ways in which you can, you know, hopefully prevent that. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Jeremy. Thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you, Liz. So my name is Jeremy Glickman. I'm an assistant district attorney at the New York County DA's office, and I've been working at the office for about 18 years. I focus on cyber-related crime, and that can be a lot of different crimes. It often is a type of larceny crime. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about the insider threat, which certainly has, like every crime, a kind of cyber angle. But really, cyber is just like technology, and so sometimes you see old crimes with just new technology, and so sometimes the latest thing that we might be looking at to investigate is actually not the latest thing. It's just an old type of crime dressed up in some slightly new clothes. So when Cy Vance became the DA, he recognized the shortcoming in the DA's office and just said, we had a group of people who had been dedicated to working on cyber kind of crime, but he said, you know something, we got to turn this unit into something bigger. And he created a unit into a bureau. So he dedicated a lot more resources because it's, of course, an obvious problem, as he often says, the crime scene of the 21st century. So we're over 24 assistants, including the supervisors. We have a whole forensic lab, so we do our own forensics. NYPD does forensics for the whole city for crimes, but we also do our own forensics. That means when we recover cell phones or computers, we're able to get into them and conduct our investigation in-house. We have in-house detectives. We have sworn investigators who work not in NYPD's offices, not in a precinct, but in our offices with us day to day, which is a much better working environment, and I think a much more collaborative environment that helps us get things done more efficiently and certainly more accurately when we need to. We work on all kinds of cases, but a lot of what we work on, as I said, is kind of cyber-enabled fraud, which is usually about larceny. Most things involving computers are about ultimately trying to do another crime. But sometimes people are trying to get back at someone, they want to damage something, they're trying to embarrass someone, they're using a computer. A lot of what people use computers for are to try and get to the money or move the money relating to some other crime, and often there's some financial crime. The insider threat, the concept of that is that, I don't know, it's not magic, it's an insider, someone on the inside. Inside of what? Your home, your business, we're talking about businesses, and it's all kinds of businesses. There is no one's immune, unfortunately, from crime. Financial, banking, big crimes, big companies, retail, huge chains, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, but also the smaller version of all of those things, the local, small, regional, or city-based bank, the small retail. Everyone has to use a computer these days. I don't know what business there is, or rare is the business, that is not somehow using a computer, if not in their day-to-day, at least in some capacity. And so if a computer is being used, that means there's an opportunity for someone. The insider has nothing to do with a computer, but because computers are so prevalent, it almost always has something to do with that. What are we keeping on our computer? What are we using our computer for? What is your business doing? Awareness of the data and the information that you create or make or store or transfer is something that you need to have, because the only reason for there to be any kind of a threat from an insider is because somebody being greedy, somebody wanting to have something that they shouldn't, is taking advantage of something that someone else has, someone you might have, or your business might have. But what a business has isn't just yours. The business is the business, right? It's the business bank accounts, it's the business records, but your business has your customers' information, customer credit card information, customers' names and addresses. These are the things that people who are interested in committing some type of other fraud want to get their hands on. And insiders, by virtue of being insiders, have an advantage at getting that. If you're outside, you can't get that. If you are inside, you might be able to get that, and you certainly can get it more easier. There is nothing special about who might be an insider for a type of case like this. Anyone could be an insider. I sound like the Grim Reaper. Like, everyone's talking very positively, like, oh, the computer's good. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta tell you. But, and I don't mean to tell kind of like horror stories like that, but I guess it's kind of like, this is, you know, look, we work on investigating and prosecuting crimes, and we learn. We learn from what people have done so that we can teach or show what we've seen, right? If we do not learn from our mistakes, we are bound to repeat them. So what we see is that everyone has done this at one time or another. Purchasing, sales, accountant, IT, human resources, and the C-suite, executives. Everyone has been involved as an insider in crime at some point. You might think some are more common, some get covered by the press maybe a little bit more. You have all this important information about yourself, about other people, and then if you're a technology company, your intellectual property, which could be invaluable. That could be the whole center of what you've been working for and creating, and you can't even put a dollar value on something like that. But that is another type of data, another type of property that can be the subject of an insider. And it's by virtue of their insider status. They have de facto access. They work for you. They are in your businesses. How are they working for you unless you have also given them access to the things to do their job? The network, the email, the bank account, the customer information, the teller at the bank. Do you have a choice but to hand the teller your identification card? You have to tell the teller your name. You have to tell the teller your bank account information. That's the point. That's the point. And that's why, frankly, it is I think these are some of the worst crimes, particularly when we talk about certain insiders, a home health care aide, because it takes advantage of the most vulnerable. It's the most trusting relationship abused. So it's an abuse of trust, and it's particularly sad, frankly. Just want to see if there's anything else there. Okay, I want to go backwards. Okay. So again, what I have is a couple of examples. I was trying to think of the best way to do this. The problem is that, like life, crime is very diverse and rich in its facts. And Liz started talking about this one case that just came out. She could sit up here for an hour and talk about the ins and outs. She just started talking off the top of her head. Very detailed, complicated things that can occur. So what I wanted to do is try and do a quick survey, because if I were talking just to the healthcare industry, we'd have a particular conversation. If I were talking just to the retail, the banking industry, I'd have another conversation. So I can't really go do a deep dive into every type of industry, but I thought we could kind of touch on a couple to show examples of what type of insiders we're talking about, what did they do, and it might help us think about how we can try and prevent that from happening to you, to your friends, to your colleagues, your family, who might be in a position as business owners or other workers who don't want this to happen to them. So in financial services, a rich area in this, because there is money usually the one, we have cases. People versus Alenikov, an employee who was a software engineer hired by a very large investment bank to help them make software so they can make more money in the markets. On his last day of work, copied thousands of files, sent them to a computer off overseas, literally the hour he left. And he left to join a new startup competitor that was going to compete with his old employer, and he was going to be tasked with creating the platform, the software trading platform that he had just been working on. That's a big deal to that bank, right? And that's a big deal to the people of the state of New York. I mean, you know, it's obviously more sympathetic, and it's seemingly, in some ways, more important when individuals are victimized. But companies are also, you know, people are behind the doors, but the companies are the lifeblood of the city, and so the company's health, even a large company, is still important. It just has a different type of importance than it does when it's an individual victim. People versus Garaventa. That was a bank executive, a vice president at a large multinational bank, who, I had forgotten this detail, I prosecuted that case myself. Some of these cases are my colleagues and other people, but I did that case. Well, you know, it was easier for me to write the list of the things I know. But this man created a fake corporation, and he had a high level, he was a vice president, he had a high level of authority and able to transfer, he's making interest payments to account holders. So what he did is he created his own account, and so instead of money going to the right place where it should have gone, he was sending money to his account, an account he controlled. And for times when he couldn't write the check, he was able to convince his coworkers to do him a favor. Now, they did not think what they were doing was a crime. He didn't say, oh, let's steal money together. He said, oh, you know, I need someone to double sign this. Can you just go ahead and sign off on that? Took advantage of kindness, took advantage of coworkers, took advantage of collegiality and professionalism. Because we do that all the time. Again, you have to ask your colleagues for help. That's what you do in a business. But that's what the insider does, takes advantage of their role and their relationships. And what I forgot about that case is that he started doing that on September 16th, 2011. And I told his attorney, I said, listen, if we go to trial on I mean, he can't go to trial. He pled guilty. At least he took responsibility for what he did. But I said, I'm going to have to tell people that on 5 days after September 11th, when people were still crying, this man created a corporation to steal money. And then he continued to do it for 5 years. People versus Naeem Crandall. Insider at a bank, accessed and copied images of checks. This man worked in a bank, in a very particular place in a bank. They call it the lockbox. They receive checks, and he's supposed to organize checks for a large utility customer. And all he was doing, well, he was doing his job, I guess. He was organizing those checks, but he was also taking a picture of them as they passed by his hands. And more importantly, because you could just take a picture and I guess put it on Instagram, I don't know what that would be, but he was sending them to a colleague of his in order that the colleague could take that information, write a check. I don't write checks. Okay? Check has your name, your address, and it's got your bank account number on it. And it has an example of what your signature looks like. Now, we have to use checks. I say I don't write them. I just strenuously avoid writing them where I don't have to. And I guess just generally I would say, if you don't have to, I like paying with cash. And a credit card, the banks seem to be pretty good about reimbursing you. And I've been a victim of identity theft. It seems ironic. I went a long ways without doing it, but it happens. But that information is particularly valuable. If you wanted to find one piece of information that's similar to the case that Liz was describing, getting information about checks is one of the highest kind of pinnacles of what a larceny kind of suspect wants to get their hands on, because they can do so much with it. Not just immediately, but then they have your information, and they've developed more information. And it is kind of scary. It is scary. People versus Tsang, another bank teller. This guy just kind of typed around, pulled out money. He was a front office guy, not a back office guy, and literally walked out of the bank on his last day with $225,000. Went to Atlantic City, where he blew it all. People versus QM, another bank teller, recruited by other people, right? I mean, this woman had a job. She had a good job. But she was taken in by a social relationship, someone she thought, let's say, was a boyfriend, who convinced her, who worked at her. She didn't wake up and say, you know, I'd like to steal money. She had a job. She was working. And it is pretty sad. And the reason why it's QM is because this case was able to be resolved in different ways than some other cases, right? When people recognize they make mistakes and can work towards it, right? This isn't the end of her life. It's the beginning of another chapter. She got caught. She did something wrong. But when you own up to it, you can move on. And that's what she was able to do. And I like cases like that, because that's a human kind of aspect of things. These people aren't. Everyone isn't necessarily evil or bad. They make bad choices and make bad mistakes, and we work with that too in our office. Our office gets a lot of criticism sometimes because we work what we do, but we also work with the community and work with defendants, right? That's part of what we do. That's part of what I do. Another guy at a bank, investment bank, partner at this used information of his coworkers. His coworkers made credit accounts in their names and then used those things. I don't know what kind of coworker that is, but retail, restaurant. I mean, I could go on. I could stay on that one topic all day, but we're not going to. I'm going to try and move quickly because there's another part of the program. But in the retail industry, that's a big place, right? We go over to a restaurant, I finish my meal, and I hand my credit card to a complete stranger who disappears for 10 minutes. Hello, can I have my card back? I need to leave. I mean, I can't tell you how much theft comes from that. Now, at the end of the day, you have to hand your card over to the waiter. That's how you pay for your food. You have to. You can't not do it. Although now I guess you got these apps and you can do stuff. But I like it. I'm at this new chain now. The reason why I go there, I didn't realize this until just now. The waiter comes over with this device, and he's like, okay, stick your card in. I'm like, oh, I like this. My card doesn't go anywhere. But waiters, unfortunately, also get recruited because they're in a position of trust, a trust with their customers, trust with their employers that they're not going to violate their customers' privacy. And they skim cards, a handheld, battery-powered device in 1 second, right in front of you. We have cases on video. The customer is at the thing, hands over the card, guy takes the card through his hand and then through the machine. Right there, half a second. So it's not that they have to disappear for 5 minutes. Those are the slower, lazy thieves. I don't know what's up with those guys, because you can do it like that. Okay. All kinds of people, all kinds of retail, hotel, auditor. It's just, but the common thread, as you hear these, you're going to start hearing the same things, right? Information, credit card information, personal information, being kept, being used, and then someone who necessarily has access to it is taking it, and then they're doing something else with it, something bad, with other people usually. Cashiers use skimming devices. Accounting departments have access to documents where it's all collected. In the healthcare industry, I talked about this earlier, a home healthcare aide. This case is going on right now, and I wish it was the only case we ever had. Unfortunately, it's certainly not the first, and it won't be the last. But she's working for an elderly woman. She's at her house every day. She's got the keys to her house. She gets food for this woman. She takes care of her. She cleans her, and then she also steals checks from her, fills them out and deposits them in her bank account and gives them to other people for other benefit. I mean, it really is hard to understand some people sometimes. People versus Resi, healthcare, but she worked on the accounting side, not for individual person, but the accountant who you talk to and say, here's my credit card to take care of my mother. I'm hiring your company to take care of my elderly father, my elderly mother. Well, she's got that information. She took that, and then she posted all the photos. We talked about social media and the allure of that, but photos of her at the World Wrestling Federation, something. She was getting tickets to concerts. She got VIP tickets. All of that paid for with their customer stuff. And fortunately, the evidence is great for us because the thing she bought fraudulently, I got her Instagram account with her at the thing, holding up the belt. It was good. Well, you got to find a little of the humor in it, right? It's sad, but it's, you got to find a little bit of the humor because we are all human, but it really is, sometimes it helps to do that. People versus Chisholm. Again, this is a hospital employee. A woman goes into a hospital, her stuff goes missing, and hospital employee is depositing her checks. Well, what do we think happened there? People versus Daniels, a home healthcare aide who convinced, a now very elderly woman, not only did she steal $300,000 from her, but convinced her to put her on her will, and was on the will. And as part of the disposition, we had to get her to agree that she would disclaim any benefit of that will. But again, nothing is immune. Transportation, a car service company, the person you call up, I guess now using Uber and Lyft, you're not calling up anybody anymore, but in my day we used to call people up. Can you come? You have an account or corporate accounts. Credit card numbers, people's information, telephone numbers. You wouldn't think some of this stuff is valuable. You think, okay, credit card number is valuable. Name, why is that so valuable? Because they use that. If I'm going to open up a credit account, I don't need your credit card. I'm going to open up my own credit card with your stuff. Name, address. With just that, the internet, technology, computers have allowed people to develop more information on their victims and then victimize them. So even what seemingly is innocuous information can be used ultimately to commit serious theft. We talked about technology. That's an employee who, I guess he was fired, right? This guy was fired and was pissed off at his company. And so he went back in because they did not control the access to the computer systems of a former employee. And he was able to get in. And when he got in, he just started deleting stuff. And when I say stuff, I don't mean delete an email. I mean he deleted servers of a large company, backups, and the backups of the backups, and the whole email. And he shut down a large company for a few days for them to get the crazy backups that they had somewhere else that didn't back up everything. And that's a big company. And as Clayton was talking about, I mean, some people, you can't back everything up, right? You have to back things up, though. This crazy ransomware, if you're familiar with that crime, have you heard of that? That's when something bad happens on your computer, and basically the only thing that you see is a sign that says, your stuff is locked, you ain't getting it, send me some of this electronic money and I'll tell you how to do it, right? If you have a backup, you take that computer and you delete everything and you put your backup back there. You're okay. If you don't have a backup, apparently you're going to be paying some criminal for your data because you don't have a choice, or you're not getting your data back because it's that strong. Computer technology now, you can't get into it. I can't get into it. The police can't get into it. It's gone. With all that bad news, I just want to say oh, sorry, you knew I'd get into it at one point, right? A little bit. But what can you do? I mean, it depends a little bit, but what you need to always continue to use is your common sense, right? In every one of these instances, it's things that computers are involved in, but they're not necessarily the end-all, be-all. So again, be aware about who you have working for you and what you have going on. You know, you got to know who's coming in. Now, it doesn't mean that you're doing a crazy full background check, but you have to know who's coming in. You have to know what you have and who has access to your stuff, so that you can feel comfortable about that person being there with your information, with your customer information, with your colleagues' information, right? You have to check out vendors, right? I mean, some of those examples were people who created their own companies to siphon money out. Is that what's going on? You have to have clear policies. Your employers got to know your employees have to know what's expected of them and what you expect from them, right? Everyone would want that. Are there company credit cards? Okay. You know, it's one thing to have an abuse of a credit card. It's another thing to outright use it and, you know, buy trips to Vegas and other stuff. You know, what's the computer use policy? Do people know when they can access the computers that you have and the data and what it's for? Audits, you got to take a look and see what's been going on every once in a while, right? If you just wait for there to be a problem, you just would have a big problem. But if you're diligent, kind of like tax time, maybe more often than that, about just saying, okay, what is my inventory? What is my payroll look like? Ghost employees on a payroll. We had a case where a person who was in charge of HR put other people on the payroll, and then when the check got generated, he just took the check. There was a dozen people who did not work for this company who were getting paid, and I guess taxes were getting taken out of that. There is no dearth of creativity for fraud. And if the same people that did some of these frauds just redirected, they'd be very successful at other things, but they're also pretty successful at crime until they get caught. Finally, you got to have up-to-date computer stuff. We talked about that ransomware. You got to have virus protection. You got to have that stuff. You got to have up-to-date software in order to have that, because you can have it on there, but they keep creating new versions. And so your old version might be good for the old stuff, but no one's trying to get you with the old stuff. They're trying to get you with the new stuff. And you got to appropriately restrict stuff. Just because someone works for you doesn't mean, okay, here are the keys, have at it, right? I mean, if you got a salesperson and they're doing sales, good, they have access to the stuff they need for sales. But if there's other parts of your business that has nothing to do with sales, sales has no business touching that, right? And the same goes vice versa. So appropriately restrict what access, physical access, right? We're talking about computers, but things get printed out and things get stored. You print out records and then they're in a cabinet. That guy in the bank thing was not working with electronic images, although I have a guy doing that, just taking screenshots, screenshot. This guy has checks. So computers are involved, but there's that. So most importantly, what do you have? What do you have for you? What do you have for your customers? Where do you keep it? How are you keeping track of it? Who has access to it? And then I also just want to mention that even completely loyal, honest, great insiders can also be a threat because they could inadvertently do something. There's been a large scam that's worth mentioning called the business email compromise. That's a label we've put on it. There's come variants of it. But what happens is an employee gets an email, what looks like an email from one of their colleagues, maybe the high-level colleague, maybe the boss. It's on Friday, it's 4:30. I need that transfer right now. Got to go ahead and send that. It looks like it comes from the boss. It is not from the boss. Interestingly, these emails often come, it needs to be urgent. Need it right away. It's Friday. They often come, while that executive is away, while someone's not there on vacation. In the middle of a real deal. Something's actually going on. Real estate transactions. And the buyer's lawyer gets an email. You know what? That escrow is now going to a different account. It's going here. I've seen a number of those. Now, it's a little scary. How is someone knowing about that? It's because they got into someone's email. The first thing that happened in that fraud was the hack. And they're reading the email. They're not just in the email like, ooh, I'm in the email. They're reading the email. And then they get into the part where something's good going on, or they're waiting. And then they send emails like this. They spoof the emails. I just showed you Jeremy Glickman at yahoo.com versus Jeremy 6 Lickman, right? But if you just look at it, it looks like Glickman in the back. I don't know how your eyes are. It almost looks like Glickman to me. That's a 6. Or president at industry versus president at L industry. There's actually no difference that you can see with an L and an I. Our defendants have incorporated websites, have created the domains at GoDaddy one day, with a stolen credit card, mind you, one day created that website, ldistry.com. So whatever a company name is, I don't know, we'll take, instead of the T, it's an L, it's an I, it's a 3 backwards. And you just look at it carefully and you think it's who it's coming from. And it's talking about something you know about. You need to verify. What do you do about that? You call up. Someone wants to transfer money? That's great. You call up the person and say, I'm not, or you can send an email back saying, okay, that's great, I'm going to talk to you in a second. You have to contact them a different way, not in the email, not that email that came. Now, you can have this set up in advance like it's some code. Some companies do that, like special codes. But call the person up and say, I just got this email. Did you did this, right? Sometimes there is an emergency transfer of some kind that needs to be done. I don't know. But, so you got to educate your employees about this, right? It's great that your employees want to hop to it and help you out. You, the boss, oh, yes, sir, I'll get that for you. But it's not great if they do it and it's not you. So you want to educate your employees. So an insider threat could be someone who's just a really dedicated employee who wants to immediately respond to a request they think is coming from their colleague or their boss. That's about it. I could talk all day. There's a lot going on. But I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Okay, anytime.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ken Kern. It's a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you. I serve on behalf of District Attorney Cyrus R. Vance, along with my 2 colleagues here. I just want to ask you 3 questions. Did you know that 17 months ago, the city of Atlanta was hit with a ransomware attack, and that they could not have basic government functions going on? Did you know that in Baltimore, 9 months ago, the 911 system went down such that people weren't able to call when someone was having a heart attack? Did you know, 3rd question, did you know that 2 weeks ago, the governor of Louisiana declared a state of cyber emergency, the first time that it ever happened in the United States, because the school system was hit with malware, so students weren't able to go ahead and access the data. So those 3 questions, some scary stuff, but I actually want to share with you 2 things that can actually be a solution to help us all. We're a community. We're here to protect our families and our global community and local community. So I want to thank Mr. Banks, Mr. Williams, and Columbia for the opportunity to speak with you, to say in 4 minutes, I want to introduce 2 things to you. Global Cyber Alliance, created 4 years ago. If you're interested as an individual citizen or an institution to have free tools at the most sophisticated level to protect yourself, your family, or your business. This is groundbreaking work that the district attorney, along with 2 other co-founders, created in September 2015. These are some of the big names that exist, but let me tell you that our partnership includes everybody along this table. I was with Mr. Banks as a partner. We were up in Boston 2 weeks ago at a cyber training. So we're very grateful to have partnership with our local community as well as now 31 countries. Here are the sectors that participate. Great individuals running the organization. When we were trying to figure out what it is that we tackle, phishing was the #1 because 80% of all attacks start from the phishing campaigns. 4 free tools. If you take anything away from this, I want you to take 2 things away. You can get this free tool, these 4 free tools, at globalcyberalliance.org. Downloadable with easy to understand videos. So even if you don't have a business, but your friend does, or a member of your church does, please go ahead, globalcyberalliance.org. We want to protect our business. Toolkit #3 is fully there. If you introduce that into your cybersecurity framework, you increase your cybersecurity potential 85%. You're stronger 85% using that toolkit. I'm going to skip ahead. I heard the remarks about Africa. We're thrilled that in Nigeria we have partners there, elite cybersecurity professionals that are working with the other 31 countries to really try to figure out a global solution. Second thing I want you to take away, we talk about the threats to the city, and the city is leading on this. Along with the District Attorney's Office, the New York Police Department, our Global Cyber Alliance, and the New York City Cyber Command created something called the New York City Cyber Critical Services and Infrastructure. Wall Street Journal article announced on April 1st of this year, which said what? We're doing great things with Global Cyber Alliance protecting the world. What are we doing here to protect our infrastructure? When that 911 attack happened in Baltimore, that could happen here. It happens to our hospitals. It happens to our office. How are we protecting our electrical grid, our healthcare, our hospitals? Did you know in the UK, 1 year ago, doctors, physicians, nurses couldn't access medical records at hospitals because of a ransomware attack? And the idea behind this is we're stronger together than separate. So we bring together organizations across these sectors, sit around the table, and say, do 3 things. #1, share real-time threat information. So if NYPD has information about a threat to the government, how are we sharing that with the healthcare industry? How are we sharing it with hospitality? Water. 1.1 billion gallons of water comes into New York City every day by sensors, by electronics. An attack against that grid would be devastating for our city. So, #1, share real-time information. #2, train jointly together. Tariq and I were up in Boston on the 26th of July going through real drills to make sure that we've got we know what to do when the S hits the fan. And we know what to do, and when you got to break that glass to get to that plan, that we have a plan that we've developed to protect the city, and that's the leadership that the city has brought to it. And #3, real-time information sharing, train together, and we actually have volunteers. In case something happens in healthcare, can we have folks in the other sectors who can come and help? In the same way that we talked about, Jeremy referenced 9/11. The best part of the city was we came together to deal with it. Same idea. So I have for you up here the article of Wall Street Journal. New York City creates a cybercrime brigade. That's for everyone that we'll hand out. And then a recent CNN article about the training we did. This city because of leadership from people like Mr. Williams, Mr. Banks, is at the forefront of doing phenomenal things. We're thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you for your time and attention. And we stand together with you in trying to deal with this.
That is awesome. You guys aren't so bad after all.
I'm so excited by this next product, Joy. Tell me all about it.
Well, Steve, like any new parent, I want to keep a watchful eye on my little cherub. And with the Buggle Baby Monitor, I can. But here's the kicker. Cyber criminals can too.
Cyber criminals? What do you mean, Joy?
Well, because it connects online and has no real security, it's super easy to hack. So the camera and speaker can be controlled by total strangers online.
So someone could be watching my child without me knowing?
That's right, Steve. And talking to them too.
Wow, that is terrifying.
It really is. But there's more. It can also be used to access other smart devices in your home. Like if you're watching TV, they can be watching and listening to you.
Let's go to the phones. We've got Silas on the line. Silas, so what do you think of the baby monitor?
Personally, I love it. I can use it to find out all kinds of information about you. Your pet's name, when your birthday is, which is really helpful when I'm trying to get into your bank account.
Silas.
Love the show, guys.
Thanks, Silas, you rascal.
Okay, Joe, I'm convinced. I love it. What's the price?
Well, it retails for only $74.99, but could end up costing you your peace of mind, your privacy, your savings.
Now that is a steal.